I become big. Hola, amigos. How are you guys? Hold on, I will add the audio in a second. I made like a mashup of soundtracks. So yeah. Let me find it. I think it is in my actual VTubing. Give me a sec. Okay, there we go. I would like to be able to also how dare I want to listen to him? Okay, got it. Let me see if y'all can hear it the way I can hear it. I'm probably gonna turn that down someday. Okay. I think I heard like genuine actual thunder, by the way. Yeah, I think that was genuine actual thunder, by the way. Oh wait, hold on. I gotta mute my mic, hold on. Oh wait, hold on. Okay, yeah, okay. Y'all can hear it like I can hear it now, I think. Am I heard above it? That's the question. Am I heard above it? That's the question. Okay, yeah, kind of. I'm gonna turn it down some, though. Okay, I think that's good. I have my thing as close as I can anyways. Okay. So, yeah. Hold on, I might add a little text thing. Can I add words? Text, there we go. I think I would have learned by now to get all of this ready beforehand, but no. messages. I have the chat box, okay. There we go. Okay. So, we are reading, as you can tell, Stephen King. I've been wanting to do this for a while, by the way. I've actually been wanting to do this for a while. Alright. I bought this at Target, like, last year, I think. Or at least a good few months ago. It's been a while. See, Pet Semetary, a novel. For Kirby Macaulay. Author's note, special thanks are in order to Russ Dorr and Stephen Wentworth of Bridgeton, Maine. Russ provided medical information, and Steve provided information on American funeral and burial customs, and some insight to the nature of grief. Get past the introduction. Part 1. Pet Semetary. Jesus said to them, "Our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may awake him out of his sleep." Then the disciples looked at each other, and some smiled because they did not know Jesus had spoken in a figure. "Lord, if he sleeps, he shall do well." So then Jesus spoke to them more plainly. "Lazarus is dead, yes. Nevertheless, let us go to him." John's Gospel, paraphrase. Louis Creed, who had lost his father at 3 and who had never known a grandfather, never expected to find a father as he entered his middle age. But that was exactly what happened. Although he called this man a friend, as a grown man must do when he finds the man who should have been his father relatively late in life, he met this man on the evening he and his wife and his 2 children moved into the big white frame house in Ludlow. Winston Churchill moved in with them. Church was his daughter Aileen's cat. The search committee at the university had moved slowly. The hunt for the house within commuting distance of the university had been hair-raising, and by the time they neared the place where he believed the house to be, all the landmarks were right, like the astrological signs the night before Caesar was assassinated. Louis thought morbidly. They were all tired and tense and on edge. Gage was cutting teeth and fussing almost ceaselessly. He would not sleep, no matter how much Rachel sang to him. She offered him the breast even though it was off his schedule. Gage knew his dining schedule as well as she, better maybe, and he promptly bit her with his new teeth. Rachel, still not entirely sure about this move to Maine, from Chicago, where she had lived her whole life, burst into tears. Aileen promptly joined her. In the back of the station wagon, Church continued to pace restlessly, as he had done for the last 3 days it had taken them to drive here from Chicago. His yowling from the cat kennel had been bad, but his restless pacing after they finally gave up and set him free in the car had been almost as unnerving. Louis himself felt a little like crying. A wild but not unattractive idea suddenly came to him. He would suggest that they go back to Bangor for something to eat while they waited for the moving van. And when his 3 hostages to fortune got out, he would floor the accelerator and drive away without as much as a look back. Foot to the mat, and wagon's huge 4-barrel caboteur, I don't know that word, sorry. Caboteur gobbling expensive gasoline. He would drive south, all the way to Orlando, Florida, where he could get a job at Disney World as a medic, under a new name. But before he hit the turnpike, big old 95 southbound, he would stop by the side of the road and put the fucking cat out too. Then they rounded a final curve, and there was the house that only he had seen up until now. He had flown out and looked at each of the 7 possibilities they had picked from the photos once the position at the University of Maine was solidly his, and this was the one he had chosen. A big old New England colonial, but newly sided and insulated, the heating costs, while horrible enough, were not out of line in terms of consumption. 3 big rooms downstairs, 4 more up, and a long shed that might be coveted to the more rooms later on. all of it surrounded by a luxuriant sprawl of lawn, lushly green even in this August heat. Beyond the house was a large field for the children to play in, and beyond the field were woods that went on damn near forever. The property abutted state lands, the realtor had explained, and there would be no development in the foreseeable future. The remains of the Micmac Indian tribe had laid claim to nearly 8,000 acres in Ludlow, and in the towns east of Ludlow, and the complicated litigation involving the federal government as well as that of the state might stretch into the next century. Rachel stopped crying abruptly. She sat up. That's it, Lewis said. He felt apprehensive. No, he felt scared. In fact, he felt terrified. He had mortgaged 12 years of their life for this. It wouldn't be paid off until Aileen was 17. He swallowed. What do you think? I think it's beautiful, Rachel said, and that was a huge weight off his chest, and off his mind. She wasn't kidding, he saw. It was the way she was looking at it as they turned into the asphalted driveway that curved round to the shed and back. Her eyes sweeping the blank windows, her mind already ticking away at such matters as curtains and oilcloth for the cupboards, and God knew what else. Daddy? Ellie said from the back seat. She had stopped crying as well. Even Gage had stopped fussing. Lewis savored the silence. What, love? Her eyes, brown under the darkish blonde hair in the rearview mirror, also surveyed the house, the lawn, the roof of another house off to the left in the distance, and the big field stretching up to the woods. Is this home? It's going to be, honey, he said. Hooray! She shouted, almost taking his ear off. And Lewis, who could sometimes become very irritated with Ellie, decided he didn't care if he ever clapped an eye on Disney World in Orlando. He parked in front of the shed and turned off the wagon's motor. The engine ticked. In the silence, which seemed very big after Chicago and the bustle of State Street, and the Loop, a bird sang sweetly in the late afternoon. Home, Rachel said softly, still looking at the house. Home, Gage said complacently, on her lap. Lewis and Rachel stared at each other in the rearview mirror. Aileen's eyes widened. Did he? Was that? They all spoke together, then all laughed together. Gage took no notice. He only continued to suck his thumb. He had been saying ma for almost a month now, and had taken a stab or two at something that might have been da, or only wishful thinking on Lewis's part. But this, either by accident or imitation, had been a real word, home. Lewis plucked Gage from his wife's lap and hugged him. That was how they came to Ludlow. In Lewis Creed's memory, that one moment always held a magical quality, partly perhaps because it really was magical, but mostly because the rest of the evening was so wild. In the next 3 hours, neither peace nor magic made an appearance. Lewis had stored the house keys away neatly. He was a neat and methodical man, was Lewis Creed. In a small manila envelope, which he had labeled Ludlow House, keys received June 29th. He had put the keys away in the Fairlane School of the compartment. He was absolutely sure of that. Now they weren't there. While he hunted for them, growing increasingly irritated, Rachel hoisted Gage onto her hip and followed Aileen over to the tree in the field. He was checking under the seats for the third time when his daughter screamed and then began to cry. Lewis, Rachel called. She's cut herself. Aileen had fallen from the tire swing and hit a rock with her knee. The cut was shallow, but she was screaming like someone who had just lost a leg. Lewis thought, a bit ungenerously. He glanced at the house across the road, where a light burned in the living room. All right, Ellie, he said, that's enough. Those people over there will think someone's being murdered. But it hurts. Lewis struggled with his temper and went silently back to the wagon. The keys were gone, but the first aid kit was still in the glove compartment. He got it and came back. When Ellie saw it, she began to scream louder than ever. No, not the stingy stuff. I don't want the stingy stuff, Daddy, no. Aileen, it's just mercurochrome. I never heard that one. It's just mercurochrome, and it doesn't sting. Be a big girl, Rachel said. It's just, no. You want to stop that? Yeah, you want to stop that or your ass will sting, Lewis said. She's tired, Lou, Rachel said quietly. Yeah, I know the feeling. Hold her leg out. Rachel put Gage down and held Aileen's leg, which Lewis painted with mercurochrome in spite of her increasingly hysterical wails. Someone just came out on the porch of that house across the street, Rachel said. She picked Gage up. He started to crawl away out through the grass. Wonderful, Louis muttered. Lou, she's tired, I know. He capped the mercurochrome and looked grimly at his daughter. There, and it really didn't hurt a bit. Fess up, Ellie. It does hurt, it hurt. His hand itched to slap her and he grabbed his leg hard. Did you find the keys? Rachel asked. Not yet, Louis said, snapping the first aid kit closed and getting up. Gage began to scream. He was not fussing or crying, but really screaming, writhing in Rachel's arms. What's wrong with him? Rachel cried, thrusting him almost blindly at Louis. It was, he supposed, one of the advantages of having married a doctor. You could shove the kid at your husband whenever the kid seemed to be dying. Louis, the baby was grabbing frantically at his neck, screaming wildly. Louis flipped him over and saw an angry white knob rising the side of Gage's neck. And there was also something on the strap of his jumper, something fuzzy, squirming weakly. Aileen, who had become quieter, began to scream again. Bee! 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 She jumped back, tripped over the same protruding rock on which she had already become a cropper, sat down hard, and began to cry again in mingled pain, surprise, and fear. I'm going crazy, Louis thought, wonderingly. Whee! Do something, Louis, can't you do something? Got to get the stinger out, a voice behind them drawled. That's the ticket. Get the stinger out and put some baking soda on it. Bump will go down. But the voice was so thick with down east accent that for a moment, Louis's tired, confused mind refused to translate the dialect. Got to get the stinger out and put some baking soda on till go down. I don't know how to read that because I don't have a down east accent. I'm from the south. He turned and saw an old man of perhaps 70, a hale and healthy 70, standing there on the grass. He wore a bibbles over a blue chambray shirt that showed his thickly folded and wrinkled neck. His face was sunburned, and he was smoking an unfiltered cigarette. As Louis looked at him, the old man pinched the cigarette out between his thumb and forefinger and pocketed it neatly. He held out his hand and smiled crookedly, a smile Louis liked at once, and he was not a man who took to people. Not to tell you your business, dog, he said, and that was how Louis met Judson Crandall, the man who should have been his father. He had watched them arrive from across the street and had come across to see if he could help when it seemed they were in a bit of a tight, as he put it. While Louis held the baby on his shoulder, Crandall stepped near, looked at the swelling on Gage's neck, and reached out with one blocky, twisted hand. Rachel opened her mouth to protest. His hand looked terribly clumsy and almost as big as Gage's head, but before she could say a word, the old man's fingers had made a single decisive movement, as apt and deft as the fingers of a man walking cards across his knuckles or sending coins into a conjurer's limbo, and a stinger lay in his palm. Biggin, he remarked. No prize winner, but it'd do for a ribbon, I guess. Louis burst out laughing. Kendall regarded him with that crooked smile and said, a corker, ain't she? What did he say, Mommy? Aileen asked, and then Rachel burst out laughing too. Of course, it was terribly impolite, but somehow it was okay. Crandall pulled out a deck of Chesterfield Kings, poked one into the seamed corner of his mouth, nodded at them pleasantly as they laughed. Even Gage was chortling now, in spite of the swelling of the bee sting, and popped a wooden match alight with his thumbnail. The old have their tricks, Louis thought. Small ones, but some of them are good ones. He stopped laughing and held out the hand that wasn't supporting Gage's bottom. Gage's decidedly damp bottom. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Judd Crandall, he said and shook. You're the doc, I guess. Yes, Louis Creed. This is my wife, Rachel, and my daughter, Ellie, and the kid with the bee sting is Gage. Nice to know all of you. I didn't mean to laugh. That is, we didn't mean to laugh. It's just that we're a little tired. That, the understatement of it all, caused him to giggle again. He felt totally exhausted. Crandall nodded. Of course you are, he said, which came out, course you are. He glanced at Rachel. Why don't you take your little boy and your daughter over to the house for a minute, Mrs. Creed? We can put some baking soda on a wash rag and cool that off some. My wife would like to say hello too. She don't get out too much. Arthritis got bad the last 2 or 3 years. Rachel glanced at Lewis. He nodded. That would be very kind of you, Mr. Crandall. Oh, I just answered Judd, he said. There was a sudden loud honk, a motor winding down, and then the big blue moving van was turning, lumbering into the driveway. Oh, Christ, and I don't know where the keys are, Lewis said. That's okay, Crandall said. I got a set. Mr. and Mrs. Cleveland, that lived here before you, gave me a set. Oh, must have been 14, 15 years ago? They lived here a long time. Joan Cleveland was my wife's best friend. She died 2 years ago. Bill went to that old folks apartment complex over in Orrington. I'll give them back over. They belong to you now anyway. You're very kind, Mr. Crandall, Rachel said. Not at all, he said, looking forward to having youngins around again. Except that the sound of this, as exotic to their Midwestern ears as a foreign language, was yoins. You just want to watch them around the road, Mrs. Creed. Lots of big trucks on that road. Now there was a sound of slamming doors as the moving men hopped out of the cab and came towards them. Ellie had wandered away a little, and now she said, Daddy, what's this? Lewis, who had started to meet the moving man, glanced back. At the edge of the field, where the lawn stopped and the high summer grass took over, a patch about 4 or 5 feet wide had been cut, smooth and close. It wound up a hill, curved through a low land of bushes and a copse of birches, and out of sight. Looks like a path of some kind, Lewis said. Oh, yeah, Crandall said, smiling. Tell you about it sometime, Missy. You want to come over and we'll fix your baby brother up? Sure, Ellie said, and then added with a certain hopefulness, Does baking soda sting? Crandall brought back the keys, but by then Lewis found his set. There was a space at the top of the glove compartment, and the small envelope had slipped down into the wiring. He fished it out and let the movers in. Crandall gave him the extra set. They were an old, tarnished fob. Lewis thanked him and slipped them absently into his pocket, watching the movers take in boxes and dressers and bureaus, and all the other things they had collected over the 10 years of their marriage. Seeing them this way, out of their accustomed places, diminished them. Just a bunch of stuff in boxes, he thought, and suddenly he felt sad and depressed. He guessed he was feeling what people called homesickness. Uprooted and transplanted, Crandall said, suddenly beside him, and Lewis jumped a little. You sound like you know the feeling, he said. No, actually I don't. Crandall lit a cigarette. Pop went the match, flaring brightly at the first early evening shadows. My dad built that house across the way, brought his wife there, and she was taken with child there. And that child was me, born in the very year 1900. That makes you 83, Crandall said, and Lewis was mildly relieved that he didn't add years young, a phrase he cordially detested. Look a lot younger than that, Crandall shrugged. Anyway, I've always lived there. I joined up when we fought the Great War, but the closest I got to Europe was